Good evening once again. And we had a beautiful kirtan yesterday. We meet twice a week for satsangs. And it just feels like every day is a day of celebration, which it is. And maybe as Lahiri Mahashaya said, Swami Ananda ji, I've been meditating on this quote in the last 1 month. And he writes that Lahiri Mahashaya said that every day is a new incarnation. But then he also added, Lahiri Mahashaya said, every breath is a new incarnation. And actually, every heartbeat can be made a new incarnation. And then Swamiji writes, but it requires awareness. And he said, how many of us are aware enough to do that? But implied over there is, if we are aware, we can use that. And how do we again make it practical? Swamiji would suggest when you're inhaling, invite that consciousness, that aspiration that you hold in your mind for yourself. And with that inhalation, feel that you are becoming that. And as you exhale, let that aspect of your consciousness go, which you want to let go of. And if we do that with awareness, which is on one level what we do with kriyas, how do we overcome our karma with kriyas? One way Kriyanandaji said was with every kriya, he said, offer up that which is a challenge for you, which is holding you down, and offer it up in the kriya breath. So this evening I want to talk about, of course, as we do on Mahasamadhi days, and this is the 127th Mahasamadhi anniversary of Lahiri Mahashaya, that so much time has now gone by since he left his body. We can look back, here we are, all of us sitting, many of us perhaps practicing Kriyabans, and that is a legacy of his. Mahavatar Babaji had entrusted him with that work, that I'm initiating you, now go and share these teachings, let people learn from your life example. Lahiri Mahashaya then would say that my life will be recorded 50 years later. And Master said it's so interesting that thought came very strongly to him as he was writing that chapter on Lahiri Mahashaya. And he said, I stopped and smiled at the cosmic timing of these events that Lahiri Mahashaya had predicted. And he said, now is the time when the world should know about this great avatar who came, who lived among us, and whose blessings, like I just read in the beginning part of the meditation, are equally available to us all to benefit from. How can you, like Master said, control or benefit from something if we are not aware of it? So just to have that understanding and then to be able to move in that direction is a blessing. So what are some things we could learn from, apply in our daily lives, you may say, from the life of Lahiri Mahashaya? Well, I want to break it down into the teachings that he brought, a particular attitude which is very deep and which as time goes by is tested for the devotee without exception. Saint Peter, Paul, Swamiji, Rajarsi Janakananda, they were tested in a quality called faith. And I want to tell a story about faith and how and why does God test that faith, and in what detail would he test it? And then finally, the principle of the Guru, which Lahiri Mahashaya, of course, was to so many, how important, how priceless that is. Once again, to remind ourselves that the greatest gift, Adi Shankaracharya said, in all the three worlds is to have a true Guru, and that grace of the Guru. And sometimes we feel we don't have the grace. A devotee once asked Master, he said, how can I change without your blessings, sir? Please bless me. And Master was not to waste any time in reminding this devotee that it was not, the flow was not interrupted from Master's side. Master said, my blessings are there. God's blessings are upon you also. He said, Devi, it is your blessings which are lacking. And we could have that. We may think, oh, how could Devi not understand that? Well, I many times feel I'm in that category. I feel, oh, God's grace is not on me, whereas it is my effort to change or cooperate with that grace which is lacking. So let's come to the teaching. Lahiri Mahashaya said, I am ever those who practice Kriya. Soon, by the way, we will have a Kriya gathering. We had our first one in 2019. I remember I was very interested in that. It was the first one in Pune. 138 of us had participated. And I invite all of you once again. This is on 23rd of October. It's a day-long program. For the first time, we will actually have Jyotish and Devi ji with us. Jayaji is also traveling from the US, and he will be also helping and being part and guiding us in that Kriya gathering. Please do come. It's a day-long event on 23rd October. Anyway, back to why did Lahiri Mahashaya say, I'm always those with who practice Kriya Yoga? And his second statement, solve every problem. Solve every problem through Kriya Yoga, he said. Now, how is that practical? Well, when you and I face a problem, let's say it be financial, it be with a person, it be with some situation involving something, well, we are seeing it on a physical level. That's where we are experiencing it. And Master said that is the farthest when creation gets from consciousness, from where God has created it. And yes, the Kriya breath, I won't go in particular details, but it involves breathing in a certain way. Actually, it's a pranayam which works with energy, which Master said few understand that what controls or dictates matter, the outward physical universe itself, which seems real, and it is real on its level. But one may ask, what is holding that? And Master said it's actually energy. It is prana, and hence the emphasis on pranayam, kriya pranayam. Now, you're not only controlling energy. As you control that energy, Master said, what will happen is, he said, your mind and the level and the quality and the kind of thoughts that pass through your brain, that starts changing, because now your energy octave has changed. And he says, go a step further. What is the power behind a thought? Now, most people by this time think, oh, it's all philosophy. It is not. It is how reality works. And like Sri Yukteswarji said, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, that's not going to change the rule. We think about something, you give energy into it, it becomes a reality. That is exactly how we find ourselves in a particular situation, good or challenging. The way out of it is not to keep wasting time on that outward problem, or like Lahiri Mahashaya said, any and every problem. The problem, like again, Padre Pio, I quoted him in the beginning. He said a beautiful statement in his life. He said, you cannot solve any problem on the level at which it was created. You're going to be in problem consciousness. You have to raise your consciousness. You have to raise your energy. And Kriyanandaji would add, he says, sometimes just by changing your consciousness, you see that the problem actually ceases to exist. It has happened to me a few times. I say, well, what are my options right now? Let me just go and meditate. And truly, in one meditation, sometimes you come out and the problem has solved itself through other people, through something. And you say, wait a minute, I thought I had to get into this. I thought I had to solve this or forsake meditation for this. No, you actually had to meditate, raise your consciousness. As he said, and somebody posted a beautiful quote today on one of the groups, Lahiri Mahashaya saying, why come to see my flesh and bones when I'm always within the reach of your kutastha? The great masters, God himself, the state of super consciousness exists all the time at the point between the two eyebrows, at the spiritual eye. Swami Kriyanandaji, when he left his body, he came to a dear devotee in her dream, and she said, where are you, sir? I miss you. He said, he said, raise your consciousness and you will always find me there in super consciousness. Where is the separation? Where is the distance? And so remember that teaching. Practice your kriyas. Uplift yourself. Be in the company of those whose consciousness is uplifted. Otherwise, the masters, the very proof, the proof that this world is the delusory force that it is, comes from many statements, but the fact that the masters themselves again and again and again incarnate to remind us shows how powerful and how easy it is to forget. Like Patanjali said, forgetfulness comes over and the smriti goes. We forget who we truly are. Why are we here? How do we go back into that state of consciousness? So remember your Kriya practice, your meditation practices, and work with that. Change, don't keep, you have to work on the problem. Lahiri Mahashaya led by a good example. He was not only inward in his life, he was extremely busy outward. That was the actually remarkable example he gave us, because many times the problems become so overwhelming. You say, okay, I'm running off to a cave. I want to leave all of this. And he said, no, 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 that's not, it's not either or. Don't shift from one side of the pendulum to the other. Be where you are, but change your consciousness. And as he would perhaps say, I have brought you Kriya. Now all you have to do is practice it. So remember that. So that is that part of the teaching. The second story is one of my favorites, I believe, for many of us, very thrilling one of Rama is raised from the dead. That is the story of faith. And some of you may know, some may not, so I'll elaborate. It's a very important one. And what I especially want to emphasize today through that story, something that maybe didn't strike me earlier, hence I never emphasized, is faith not just in the picture of a master, in his power, which an avatar's power is beyond question. Those who believe in spiritual matters, they know who an avatar is, and they hold limitless power. The question is, why aren't we benefiting from that power so many times in our lives? And it comes down to faith. And here, I would say faith in every aspect of their teaching. Master said it doesn't work like this, that you say, I'll accept this much, but not that. Yoganandaji said it doesn't work like that. You will then receive this much and not that. Like he would say, if you pray in a restless manner, some prayers will be answered, some will not. Or like Krishna says in the Gita, to the doubter, I come as his doubt. There is nothing but God in existence. And if we are not receiving or feeling their closeness, as the story will emphasize, Lahiri Mahashaya told Sri Yukteswarji, develop faith. You should have had faith in me. And faith is built in a step-by-step manner. And we have to start where we are. So anyway, in this story, as it happens, and God tests us on some of the most tender, you might say, relationships of ours, or in the tenderness of our heart. And Sri Yukteswarji, when he was young, his name was Priyanath Karar. And he said, Rama, my best friend, and I were inseparable. We loved each other so much. And he said, one day Rama fell ill. And he fell ill, and the doctors were saying, there's nothing we can do. I believe it was a case of Asiatic cholera. And what do you do? Well, the blessing is if your guru is in the neighborhood, you run to him. If the doctors can't help, you run. And Sri Yukteswarji ran, and he said, Master, he told Lahiri Mahashaya, Sir, Rama is very unwell. And the doctors are despairing. And Lahiri Mahashaya said, don't worry, Priya. Rama will be well. And Sri Yukteswar was renewed with joy and enthusiasm. He said, thank you, sir, thank you. Your blessing is binding on this universe. I am relieved. And he says, yes, go, don't worry, Rama will be well. He goes back to find Rama is actually more unwell. And he again interacts with the doctors, and they say, we've done our best. Actually, unfortunately, there's nothing else we can do. You have to remember, this is way before the antibiotic era. So you could do only symptomatic cure with, maybe, I don't even know if there were IV fluids at that time, but they were doing their best. And Rama said, I'm feeling worse, actually. And the doctors left. And Sri Yukteswar said, my goodness, this is urgent. I should once again ask for prayers. And he ran back. And he said, Sir, Rama is deteriorating. And Lahiri Mahashaya was meditating. And he said, don't doubt. Don't worry. Rama will be well. He said, okay, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry to doubt you, but I just thought I'll check with you. He said, thank you once again. And he ran back. And Rama said, I have only enough energy to ask you for one last thing. When I die, which he said, I'm about to die now, he said, at least ask Lahiri Mahashaya to bless my mortal remains. And saying so, he died. And imagine the state of Sri Yukteswarji's mind. Here you have your best friend, a good person, very good person, and your guru said nothing will happen, and he dies in front of you. And Sri Yukteswarji was young, so he started crying and sobbing, and somehow went back to Lahiri Mahashaya's room. And this time, Lahiri Mahashaya initiated the conversation. He said, "How is Rama?" And Sri Yukteswar, in between his sobs, he said, "Sir, you will see how he is when you see his mortal remains." And Lahiri Mahashaya said, "Control your emotions. Control yourself, Priya. Come here, sit down. Let's meditate." Maybe he would have added, "Let's do some kriyas." And Sri Yukteswarji sits down, he starts meditating with him, and he said, hours go by. I mean, think about it. And then Lahiri Mahashaya says, "Now, please take that oil, castor oil from that lamp, and pour 7 drops in Rama's mouth." And Priyanath Karar, Sri Yukteswarji says, "Sir, he has been dead for hours." He says, "Do as I say." Goes and he says, rigor mortis had set in, which is the term for the stiffening of the dead body. And he says, somehow I opened his mouth, his lips, and I started pouring. And he said, at the 7th drop falling in his mouth, Rama woke up, looked around happily, and he says, "Come, let's go and thank Lahiri Mahashaya." As if he was taking a nap or something. And Sri Yukteswar was wiping his tears. He said, "What happened?" He said, "Oh, there was a blaze of light. And Lahiri Mahashaya came into my mind's eye." And he says, "Come at once. Come with Priya. Come." And so they both went, and Lahiri Mahashaya had a twinkle in his smile, in his eyes. And he told Sri Yukteswarji, "You must deepen your faith. You doubted me. When I said he would be well, you should have watered that thought." It's a little bit like that story of, again, Lahiri Mahashaya telling Sri Yukteswarji, "You will be well," and he was, and "You may, let's see how you will be." And he was unwell, and he said, "Sir, your grace has been withdrawn." He said, "My grace has not been withdrawn. Your mind has made you unwell. You doubted." And let's not underestimate this unless we really know how to surrender and convert our doubts into a constructive direction. Master told Swami with deep compassion and affection one day when they were by themselves. He said, "Walter, you always had my love," which is to say in all incarnations. But he said, "You were eaten with doubts." And Swami said he was speechless. That what could a master do? You, to the doubter, "I am his doubt." So you and I have to at least do that part of changing our energy level, our consciousness, our mood. When we are in a mood, nothing makes sense. And faith and some of these negative qualities, moods and doubts, they simply are poles apart. And we have to again and again and again and reestablish ourselves, you may say, in that faith, which was tested sorely by, and imagine by the death of Rama. And when Sri Lahiri Mahashaya is explaining this, imagine Rama is listening to this conversation, that, and then Lahiri Mahashaya said, "I had to allow him to die so that you would learn this lesson." And how obedient and sweet Rama must be to be a victim, shall I say, or the participant in this drama. And then he had to ask his own question. He says, "But sir, why castor oil? Why was castor oil used to revive me?" And Lahiri Mahashaya said, "Oh, my child, it could have been anything other than castor oil also. More important was to do what I was telling him to do. The castor oil was just a vehicle for those blessings." And remember that lesson. First, we practice our kriyas, and then God will test how much have we really practiced by testing our faith. And then finally, what I think is most perhaps important in the final analysis is the grace of a guru. And yes, you and I have to meditate. And why wouldn't we meditate? Meditation is oneness with God. Especially through Kriya, Hong Saw Om technique. It's like a direct telescope or like a bioscope. You turn it and you'll see peace, calmness, joy, love, bliss. It couldn't be more direct than that. And Master has given us those techniques. However, I think all of us will remember that story from the autobiography of a yogi where Ram Gopal Mazumdar, the sleepless saint, I believe it was, who came to Lahiri Mahashaya, and he said, "Sir, I am not yet one with God. I have not been able to merge my consciousness with God." And Master writes in details before that story that Ram Gopal Mazumdar had personally told him that he meditated 18 hours a day for 20 years. Then he felt 18 was not enough, so he started meditating 22 hours a day, I believe, for 20 more years. And then he went to Lahiri Mahashaya and he said, "Sir, deep experience has come to me. Your blessings have filled my life. But the final goal, there is a veil that remains between me and the beloved, infinite beloved." And Lahiri Mahashaya says, "What can I do? You must meditate more." You must meditate more. And he starts, I believe, sobbing. I've heard another story of somebody who came to Anand Mohima. This person had tens of thousands of followers, this direct disciple told me. And he was sobbing for hours. He kept telling Ma, so many things have come, but that final thing is not coming. And he said, Ma was quiet. And this person was destined to witness this story because when this great spiritual teacher came, he said, "Ma, I want to talk to you." This was already late in the night. Ma said, "Say what you have to say." And he looked at this disciple and Ma said, "Say it in front of him." And then this whole moment of grace and hours of prayers unfolded. And Lahiri Mahashaya said, "You must meditate more. What can I do?" And he said, "No, sir, I have tried everything. I've tried everything." And then Lahiri Mahashaya said, "Now go. I have intervened." And Ram Gopal Mazumdar would say that that night, his soul's journey came to that remarkable, that final destiny, that he said that final goal, that union was achieved. And he told Master that that is grace of Guru. There is no power beyond that. It is, remember that 75%? God is there, Guru is there. You and I have to do our part. And part of you and I, our 25%, is not only the practice of a technique or the teachings, but to understand that sooner or later, and it is, who can twist the arm of God or Guru? Somebody said to the foremost disciple of Neem Karoli, Baba, Mauni Ma, "When will I find God?" And she was telling us it was a Kriya Yogi. And she was narrating that story. And she said, "Who knows?" Only God knows, and your Guru knows. Your and my job, she said, is to keep doing what they've told us to do. Part of is that to always remember, like Lahiri Mahashaya said, if you think of my photo as a picture, as a photo, that is what it will be. If you think of it as a blessing, as a protection, it will become that. And as Swami was saying in that reading I read in the beginning, our reverence, of course, for a perfected being, an avatar, a remarkable guru, is so deep that, of course, we cannot, we see them, unfortunately, because of that, at a distance. And he says, don't do that. Would you keep the goal at a distance? Would you keep your parents at a distance? And he said, invite them, ask them to expand your heart, ask them to help you understand these teachings, engage with them all the time. That is how Swami Kiranandaji, our beloved friend and guide, he found that goal. Somebody asked him, because our mind calculates like this. They said, but sir, you were with Yogananda only 3.5 years. He said, but I have kept an unceasing communication with him for 65 years now. When he was answering that, he said, and now I don't know where Kriyananda ends and Yogananda begins. You see, that is yoga, that is oneness. And that is your and my part. These days, where Lahiri Mahashaya was brought back by Divine Mother into herself, that come, you have finished that work. God is not going to test you and me endlessly. He's only testing us on those attitudes which we are holding close to ourselves. So let's invite him. Let's invite the gurus. Let's go in detail with their teachings. They are available for a reason. And then let us do our part, and they will not fail to do their part. God bless you on this day, and happy Navaratri season once again. Jai Guru.